Hi, I'm Tim Ives, Director of Photography of Halston on Netflix, and this is the Go Creative Show.
Hello and welcome to the Go Creative Show, a podcast for filmmakers. My name is Ben Consoli, and today's guest is Tim Ives, Director of Photography for the Netflix series Halston. Tim, welcome back to the show.
Hi, Ben. How are you?
I'm doing well. I loved this show, and I cannot wait to talk about it. But before we get there, I just want to quickly mention our sponsor, MZ Education for Creatives. Head over to gocreativeshow.com/MZ. And don't forget, use coupon code GCS20 for 20% off. Of course, follow us on your favorite podcast apps and Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and more. All things Go Creative Show at gocreativeshow.com. All right, Tim. So you've been on the show. I think you've been on 4 or 5 times. You might be the most reoccurring guest we have.
Oh, I wonder if that's true. I've loved watching your podcasts and I've seen so many talented people on it. So it's always an honor to be here with you.
Well, all the seasons of Stranger Things. So, I mean, what is that? 3 or 4 by now, right? And then you came on. I think you came on even once for our live Instagram show. It's just been,
yeah.
We've been talking quite a bit, and it's been fun watching your work kind of progress and change over time, because I think you've brought such a unique style to the work that you've done. And I think Halston is certainly like the next evolution of your work and looks amazing. And I mean, what a great show to be part of, especially first one back after COVID. My Lord.
Yeah, it was a great experience, and very hard, as I'm sure most people that worked last fall would attest to their own jobs. But it was a very rewarding job, very difficult. Just the pressure of wondering how safe we were being, and as well as wanting to be as creative as we always want to be on our shows and films.
Did you feel like you had to make or kind of remove some creative decisions because it just wasn't possible? Did you feel stifled by any of the restrictions at all?
Well, there were some things that we really had to figure out. And back in the fall, there was still an issue with using atmosphere on shows. Some networks, some companies, some streamers didn't want to use it. They weren't sure if it exacerbated COVID, or if it made it worse or better, just because of particles hanging in the air, sort of thing. So some shows, and we found out since then that actually no, it actually deters it and drops it down and diffuses it. But we weren't able to use atmosphere on the show, and you know, obviously Stranger Things, we used to use atmosphere all the time in bathroom scenes, But on this one, you know, I had a character, and all the characters were smoking, and then we had the big Studio 54 set, which you can only imagine that every single person in there was smoking at the time, and it was a very grungy-looking place. You know, we think of Studio 54 as being very glamorous, and it was. The people were glamorous, and the lighting there was glamorous, but it was also like pretty raw, and I had to figure out how to get that rawness without smoke, and I was literally like thinking this is going to be impossible. But then,
what did you do?
We shot with the Sigma set of lenses. They're fairly new to the motion picture business. Sorry, that's my dog. Yeah,
he wants to chime in.
And they also have a line of lenses called the Classic Studio Sigma Classics, and those have a very unique flaring capability to them, and they flare not like specularly, like you know, Panavision. You get those beautiful circles kind of flying at you.
Yeah,
they kind of dehaze or haze the image and make it look like it's almost had like a light leak. And if we were shooting film, like a light leak, and that really was the best thing I could find to give us that sense of atmosphere in there when we weren't using it. And we had, of course, all those lights flaring, and that when you see it, it's episode 4. I think you mostly see it. You'll know that's what I had to do.
So was it like blooming the lights in the way that like a what's that filter?
Like a pro mist.
Yeah, is it something like that where it sort of expands the lights, blooms them a little bit?
It kind of did that. It lowered the contrast a little bit, but we were working in an environment that already had very deep blacks. and it just sort of gave a wash over it. It's not something that that maybe you would want for most applications, but it was something that really was very unique and gave me the feeling of having atmosphere in there, and it saved the scenes there, I think, because it really gave it that kind of grungy feeling that I wanted, at the same time as having all these beauties and fabulous people in there and horses walking through and all that sort of stuff. But it came out well. Also, Studio 54 was hard because we couldn't put as many people in there as we would normally want to do, because of all the COVID protocols and not being able to have a certain amount of people in the space. So that was was plating involved with background, and some shots just had to be a little tighter than maybe we wouldn't have. But I don't think you're going to notice it in the show. I hope you don't.
I didn't really notice it. In fact, well, just to bring people up to speed, the show is called Halston. It's a 5-episode kind of short, single season series, I'm guessing. It seems like the story certainly ends.
Yeah, it does.
and it follows the fashion designer Halston, played by Ewan McGregor. It takes place in the 70s and 80s in New York, and you had just started talking about one of the scenes I wanted to focus quite a bit on is this Studio 54 recreation. We have these images in our head of what that place was like because it was well covered. It's been in films and TV shows. There's all sorts of imagery about it out there. But you still have to represent it like there's almost a responsibility to represent it accurately, but also give the viewer kind of a new insight into it because many people watching didn't have the chance to get in there. So how do you approach recreating something that's so iconic?
Well, certainly, I have the Studio 54, books. I've got a lot of archival books that have all the photography from the time there, and a lot of it was without flash or with flash at times. So the film emulsions they shot with were slow, and that's why it had a grainy kind of feel. And we wanted to sort of stay a little bit in that mode, but. The one thing I didn't realize in Studio 54 was that kind of everything and anything goes. I mean, people were just having, from the stories I've heard, having sex in public locations there, and the drugs were all over the place, and it was just a fabulous sort of time, and anything goes with no ramifications sort of thing. So, first of all, we had to get a lot of it architecturally correct, and that's where Mark Ricker, our production designer, came in and took over the Manhattan Center, which is on 34th Street, and really did such a great job with it. And he brought in those vertical tower lights that have the cherry top kind of cop lights on them, and we accentuated everything with LEDs, our off camera, and park cans that were on camera that were tungsten based, not LED, because we didn't want to give away our filming sort of tricks, but the whole place, was sort of shrouded in blackness, and that's how it sort of was back then as well. There wasn't one thing that, besides the lighting, that you could really look at and say. I mean, they're the banquettes, they're the DJ booth, and DJ booth played a heavy part in it as well as the bar. But we had them all on wheels. We could kind of move them around because nobody really knew the geography of that place. It's not documented in a way that tells you exactly what the space is. And in fact, that's exactly the way it was back then too. They would move the bar over here and move this, move it around. So we kind of took liberties with that as far as making the place feel a little more abstract. Again, accentuating with LED sky panels and other putting those in sort of a disco mode at times, and choosing the colors that we chose, which were purples, lavenders, yellows, and reds, to kind of mix together and bring all that out.
Yeah, when I was watching it, you had mentioned earlier that because of COVID restrictions, you couldn't have as many people in the room as you wanted. You had to do some plate work. When I was watching it, I wasn't even thinking about that because I didn't know when you shot it. But I did notice that there was a restraint in these big, wide establishing shots. And I thought it was kind of interesting because it kept Studio 54 a little bit mysterious. You never really knew where you were in the space, but you knew you were there because of all the colors and the sounds and everything. But there was still a mystery in it. And I thought, because, I mean, just seeing Ryan Murphy's work, he loves wide shots. He loves giant wide shots on cranes to really show you where you are.
Yeah.
Not doing that, excuse me, not doing that was kind of an interesting show of restraint.
Well, if you remember if anybody Googles the images of like outside Studio 54 in 1979 and you see the crowds there, it's like it was just wall to wall, jam packed people. I mean, they were like smushing each other. And there's some very wide shots there. And when we can only shoot 40 people at a time, it's like that was a difficult thing to do. So we couldn't really go with the scope of that, but we did capture that arrival with Halston, Liza Minnelli, and their whole crew in a way that we wanted it to feel fabulous and privileged and all that. We initially were hoping to shoot actually up at the Studio 54 location, but we couldn't get it, so we had to take Irving Plaza over down in the Village to do 4 exteriors there. We did do. At the Versailles location, we did shoot some quite wide angles there. We had the capability there. It was interior, but the place was immaculate and beautiful. And that's where we pull off those wide shots. And I think we did it in other places too, whatever we could. We enjoyed those for sure.
Oh, yeah. They're such a blast. It's just fun to kind of see. I don't know. I'm always impressed by just all the blocking and everybody's moving the right direction. And just when it all works, it's just so satisfying to have a shot like that. So I really loved it. All right. Studio 54, I had a couple more questions in there. So you're in a space where color is just everywhere. Like you chose your color palette, like you'd mentioned before, but you're going to have all sorts of colors on people's skin. You kind of have to just, I guess, well, you tell me, how do you approach your skin tones and how do you approach thinking about highlights and all of these things that you would normally do in a space where there's absolutely no control over the light?
But there is control over the light.
There you go.
Yes, we light the wides, we shoot the wides, we come in for close-ups, and at that point, all the light, the colored light that is still happening, still going off, is coming only from the back. I take it all off the front, and then we redirect with the light that's going to be a little bit better for their skin tone. So nowadays when you're doing all the lighting through an iPad, it's my gaffer Ken Shibata brilliantly had the whole thing organized so I could have immediate access to any single light I wanted. Dim it, change color, turn it off, and we had a 360. We had to do 360 lighting in there so we could have that kind of studio disco lighting happening at any angle we wanted, and also so that I could take it off too. So when I'm on actors in a dialogue scene, mostly in a dialogue scene, I'm just using those colored lights in the background, and then bringing in my own thing from the front to make them cosmetically, not make them look like they're, freaks of nature or anything. Yeah,
it's interesting. I want to go back and look at stills from those scenes because I felt like it just had so much color in there, but you're right. The skin always looked correct. Everybody always looked amazing on the show. I mean, that's kind of what it's about. It's fashion and beauty, and that's what it is.
You're 100% right, and all our actors were, amazing to look at. They are all, excellent at their craft as well. We wanted to. I didn't want it to look like it was a kind of a hot mess either, on their faces. Yep. Like I did go for the grunge in there, but I'm never gonna put some weird color on someone's face that doesn't help them out at all.
Yeah. I want to talk about the way you approached the cinematography and the lighting to show how Halston is really disconnected from people in a way. Like he really lacks personal relationships and he's sort of isolated. And he always feels like he's in a large space alone, even if there's 1 million people in there. He doesn't seem to have personal connections very well. He seems aloof and standoffish. And I think there must have been lighting and camera tricks to accentuate those qualities. Obviously, his performance was great, but were there things that you had done to make him feel isolated?
I think one of the main locations that we filmed in, which is the centerpiece of the show, is his office building, which is a
Once he
office.
reaches that great success, you talk about like that big.
That's right. And along the way, he had his vision. I mean, he started with the Jackie Onassis hats, and that became a popular thing for him in the '60s, and that got his way into doing the gowns and dresses that he became really famous for. But he never compromised his vision. I believe he even cut the fabric using the silks that he would sell the clothes in versus doing a much cheaper fabric just to get the style in. He didn't cut corners anywhere, and he didn't do that with his office. And his office was basically all mirrors, so you could not avoid seeing your own reflection in there. So that was pretty true. The office that Mark Ricker redesigned based on his office, I think, typifies what you're talking about. Halston alone in his castle. We also used color heavily in the rise of his career, and then took it back a little bit towards his downfall. That helped to sort of accentuate the character's humanity as he realized that everything that he had was being taken away, and all you have after that is I guess your soul and your heart. And I think he came to terms with that in the end, at least as far as the show is concerned. But the tower itself, where he made most of his decisions and where he made his fame and fortune, I think reflects a lot of that inner, the disconnect from other people as well. I mean, he was super close with Liza Minnelli. That was his confidant. And, Joe Eula as well, but still he burnt friendships. If anybody had a different opinion or didn't go along with, criticized how he was doing things.
His relationships were on rocky ground, no matter what. Like it always felt like at any moment this friendship is over, and there was a fragility to that. And I think you guys did a really good job of representing that in a lot of the scenes. You mentioned two things there: space and color. Let's talk about each. So the space in this tower that's all reflective. There's mirrors everywhere. Let's start with just the logistical challenges of having mirrors everywhere. I mean, was there any pushback at all? Did you, when the designer came to you and said, this is going to be the space, were you like, why are you doing this? This is insane.
Well, in all honesty, so the show actually had gone to picture pre-COVID, and my friend Will Rexer was the DP on that, and he worked with Mark Ricker in designing the tower set and gimbaling the mirrors so that we wouldn't see each other and see camera in the shot. And so a lot of that work had been done ahead of time. And then when we started back up, Will had another thing that was a conflict as far as him starting and restarting Halston, and he approached me about it at that point too. And I was I had 5 months off, and this was an amazing project to come back to after 5 months off, and I was very happy to do it because I've liked Dan Minahan's work for a long time, and Will and I have been friends, and I have high respect for his work. So, and also Will was like, this is a great story that has we did the first episode, but then you can kind of evolve from there. It spans decades. So all of that was enticing and allowed me the freedom to sort of go where I wanted to go with it. But Will had done all that work before, and he did a great job with Mark protecting us from seeing things we didn't want to see too much. We used a lot of blinds as well, which were mirrored blinds. We would bring in every once in a while when we couldn't get ourselves out of the frame. We'd get a blind behind the actor to reflect something else off camera, which worked really, really well. And that color, that red color, we, when you see that kind of red all over the place, it can be at first like, oh my God, how am I going to get out of this without everybody's skin being red? And we have tricks for that too. But But I have to thank Mark and Will for setting that up nicely.
Well, how did you get the red from, or how did you make it so the red wasn't spilling all over skin tone? I mean, was that a post thing, or were you able to do stuff practically on set?
I try to
Because
do things
for the people that
yeah.
haven't seen it yet, like I'm talking about, like the entire space is red.
Yeah.
And red in mirrors, like everything's red.
So, like I do with a lot of shows, I work on anything that's off camera that has color in it. I usually put up bleached or unbleached muslin, wrap it around it so it's not reflecting back into the actor's face. So again, like the lighting in Studio 54, the color is behind the actor. And I'll wrap it around just to take it out of their faces. And I did that wherever I could in that particular location. A lot of times Halston comes off the elevator and walks through a completely red room. And there are times I was able to lay down white on the ground so that if I didn't see his feet, I could at least have him walking through, not reflected off the floor and take it down a little bit. Yeah. So that helped greatly. And we did that in the main office as well. We had lots of white panels just to come flying in. They looked like I forget what David Stern, my key grip, what he called them, but they were like those playthings, those pads that you put down in a kid's playroom that are kind of soft in case they fall down. They're usually colored with letters on them, but his were all white, and we just threw them in there, and they're interlocked, and used them all the time to get that red out of their skin.
Huh. That's interesting. So, and I can imagine too, once the white's on the floor, you've sort of taken the red out of the mirrors as well. So you've really pulled a lot of color out.
And they're good for the sound department too, because they're a little cushy. They don't make a lot of noise. If people are wearing, clicky clacky shoes, doesn't emphasize that. So they're I can find out what they are, and I'll email you afterwards and tell you.
I know what you mean. They almost look like puzzle pieces.
And they are puzzle pieces. Yeah,
they sort of interlock. Yeah. People use them on like gym floors and stuff. Exactly. The more robust ones. Yeah, I mean, you can find those at like Home Depot or something.
You can, and I don't know where Dave got them, but boy, they saved our butt a few times as far as like just quickly coming in, an actor sitting down, and we just like click, 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 click all around them, 360 around them, and boom. It really helped out. Really helped out.
Now, your experience on Stranger Things, you've certainly represented the 80s quite a bit. What lessons did you learn from that series that you brought onto Halston now, once again, sort of living in the 70s and 80s?
Oh, geez. I don't know. That's not the thing I really think about too much. I think, when you read a script, it either speaks to you or it doesn't. And I think that, obviously Stranger Things spoke to me and Halston did as well. And I think you just try not to inflict too much of technical from the time period onto the show. Although I'm saying that out loud, I'm realizing that's the opposite of what I did on Stranger Things, because we really went back and I really wanted to light like the lighting was in the 80s, and at least in the first season, and then the show evolved from there. Yeah. But this one, I didn't really want to. I didn't want to show our hand in that way. I didn't want it to look like it was, like Stranger Things season 1. I wanted to feel like it could have been made in the 80s. This one, I just wanted to document it in a way that was more just storytelling, and didn't want to put a certain spin on it. I think in the first episode, Will was using some colored filters to sort of accent the early part of his life, and as his fame grew, we sort of pulled that back and walked away from it and lit more colorfully. And then, like I said before, when we got towards the end of his life, we didn't really bring those filters back, but we didn't bring as much color back into the scenes as well. Mm-hmm. I feel like I've gone off on a couple tangents here, but the Stranger Things looks like the 80s. This one feels like I don't know. It just feels right for telling the story.
And also, too, I think Stranger Things is representative of like regular America 80s. This is representative of the super elite, ultra wealthy, like the untouchable 80s that you sort of think about and you have in your mind, but most people can't relate to that. So it seems like you were able to play a little bit more in that space.
Well, it's not so. Okay, again, it's production design. Jerry Anasenwan, as our costume designer, did just an incredible job. So you have all this incredible work in front of you. I think it was for me to sort of like just film it as nicely as I could and as naturally as I could, and let their work speak for themselves. And there was no reason to put a neon spin on it or any sort of thing that was like, now we're in a 1980s film, just because it wasn't about the look of it as much as it was about the story. And I think Stranger Things is a bit of both of those things.
Let's take a quick moment and talk about MZ, Education for Creatives. Now, you want to think about MZ as like kind of the Netflix for all things that us, filmmakers and video production pros need to know. It really is a video library of everything that you need to know to hone your craft, get better at what you're doing, maybe learn new skills. That's what MZ is all about. Now, I'm talking about courses in all sorts of things like directing, cinematography, post-production, visual storytelling, everything that we want to know and need to know to be better at our craft. And you're learning things from educators that are like really working in the industry, like A-list people that are at the top of their game. I'm talking about Tom Cross, the editor of La La Land and Whiplash, did a whole course on the art and technique of film editing. So it's like, who better to teach you editing than Tom Cross? And of course, you also have Vincent LaFerre, Shane Herbert, Philip Bloom, the ARRI Academy. There's so much there on MZ. In fact, there's hundreds and hundreds of hours of high-quality video-based filmmaking education. Now, yes, you can buy individual courses, and that's fine. In fact, I did quite a bit of that before I became an MZ Pro member. But now that I'm an MZ Pro member, it really changes everything because you have access to the entire catalog, which is like, that's what I mean, the Netflix of filmmaking education. That's what it's all about. So check it out for yourself over at gocreativeshow.com/MZ, MZED. And check it out. Look at the courses. If there's stuff on there you're interested in, I really suggest becoming an MZ Pro member because I think that's the best bang for your buck and gives you access to everything. But like I said, you can buy individual courses. And when you do buy, use coupon code GCS. I don't even know the initials of my own show. GCS20. Go Creative Show GCS20, and you'll get 20% off over there at MZ Education for Creatives. Let's talk about filming fashion and, beauty, really, in Halston, because so much of this is about the fashion. So much of this is about flawless skin, perfect bodies, perfect people. And you sort of have to do that. A lot of that is in the performances and wardrobe and makeup, clearly, but there must be some tricks that you're doing in the lighting and camera and lenses to really bring out the beauty of all of these characters, fabrics, fashion. Talk to me about that.
You're right. Our actors, they had some of the most beautiful faces I've ever filmed before. So that's 90% of it. But I did get my start working with a fashion photographer, Arthur Elgort, back a long time ago, and I always watched how he lit things, and I think over the time I have an appreciation for that. But there are certain diffusions I like to work with. I think the LED lighting now has changed the way that we need to shoot, or we can shoot. I used to use a lot of book lights, and now I go direct. Sometimes, I use book lights when I can, but sometimes there's not enough space for it. But I go direct through certain diffusions that I hadn't used before that are thick enough to resemble a book light. And we try to give our protagonist an eye light all the time, like that little ping in the eye as well, which I think I said before, kind of represents honesty and truth and gets you inside the character a little bit. The villains usually don't get the eye light because they're a little more mysterious. But Halston was sort of like I think he's an anti-hero probably. But yeah. But Yeah, I have a great appreciation for fashion and fashion photographers from from the all the way from like Man Ray and Harrell to today.
Tell me what you hear this term book light quite a bit, and I don't know if I totally know what that is. And I'm sure there's got to be some people in the audience that may not understand that either. What is a book light? I've heard that quite a bit.
Okay, so a book light is, let's say this is your 12 by 12 diffusion. And what I would do is I would make can I do this? I'm not going to do this very well. Make a little book out of them. So they're like 45 degrees from one another.
Okay.
And you bounce, you take a pretty powerful light and bounce it into a white, source, like a muslin or an ultra bounce. And then it goes through your diffusion of choice. So it's reflective light and then double diffused. And it just creates a quality of light that is very natural, but also just never bad. Never bad. I mean, I don't care. I've said before that you could put a book light in any direction, like backlight, front light, anywhere, and it's going to look great. It wraps around skin. It creates a very reflective sort of a natural light, and can light a space up in a way that's just, it feels very natural.
And it's at a 45, like it's a 45-degree angle.
Yeah. So the light goes into this, and then that source is you put the diffusion, which is now your source, at an angle that whatever angle you want to tell to light the characters.
So what is the advantage of doing that versus just putting a less bright light right through the diffusion? Like, what? I don't know if I explained that. Like, what's the advantage of putting a hotter light to bounce off of the other end of the book to go to the diffusion versus just going through the diffusion?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. So pointing a light directly through diffusion versus bouncing it. Yeah. It's just, you get a much softer quality of light. You get a less theatrical quality of light. Mm-hmm. That's really the main point, I think, is when anytime you go direct, you get a little bit of a harder shadow, and it feels maybe a little more theatrical, and it also tends to fall off faster or be brighter, closer, and fall off faster. So now you have actors walking through a scene and it gets hot when they walk to the left and falls off faster when they go to the right. Yeah. Versus the book light, which depending on the diffusion you use, sends the light a little bit further, and kind of it's a little more even approach. And it's just a little, it's just nicer on skin as well. And of course, the larger the rag, the larger the front of that element, the softer it's going to be. If you just put a light through a 4x and point it at an actor, traditional tungsten light, 2K, 5K, 10K, you're going to find that it's going to be a little more theatrical than if you bounced a light. And nowadays we have LED. We're bouncing, sky panels into these things, and it's doubly soft. It's just pretty.
So you're saying you're still employing the book-like technique, but you're just using LEDs as your source.
Right. So if I have the space to do a book light, I'll do it. But if I don't and I'm running out of time, I can now with some diffusions that I like using and the softness of LED, which is a much softer source to begin with than say a 10K Fresnel, but still has the brightness of it. That can give you a quality very close to a book light, which takes up twice the amount of space.
Huh. Oh, that's interesting. Because I've heard that term a million times, and I never really knew if it was a light itself or a technique. And it sounds like it's sort of both, but it's a technique.
It's definitely a technique, and it's about more indirect light than direct light is really what it's about.
Yeah.
We've all, we started off our careers appreciating open window light. And I remember shooting documentaries where we'd have a cowboy standing just inside a barn and it would be dark inside the barn. But that light, the skylight that was just, reflected off the sky hitting him was just stunning and beautiful. And a lot of the painters worked with indirect light too, the Dutch painters. And that's really what we're talking about here is indirect light versus direct light. Recreating that feeling of it being unlit or natural.
Have you ever played with what is the name of it? It's this lighting technique with mirrors. I can't remember the name of it. It pops up on my Instagram all the time. And I guess it's like I had somebody on the show talking about this too, but it was like like a single light source and then using mirrors to carve it and kind of spray it in different spots around the room. It's killing me that I can't remember that, but it sounds like you're not familiar with it anyway. But yeah, a few years back, it was like a few DPs were starting to think about it and explore it. Didn't seem to go anywhere though. Does that ring a bell at all?
I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking, I don't know. I mean, we'll put mirrors on the sides of lights to kind of reflect and refract. Is that a word? The light, so that if I'm keying, somebody with a light, and it's a hard light, I can grab a mirror and get a little splash of sun in the background. So the light itself is kind of doing double duty. But mirrors are basically I mean, the word mirror itself, makes it seem it's just a copy of whatever light you're putting into it. So hard light would just, I'm not sure how I would use that really.
I know I'm trying to find it as we talk. I'll put it in the show notes because I can't spend forever trying to find it. But there's like a whole system out there that uses this, and it's been a while since we talked about it. And like I said, it didn't seem like it really took off. But a few years back, people were kind of talking about hearing about it, not talking about using it. But regardless, we don't need to go down that road. You had mentioned earlier in the show the lenses. I had already forgotten what you said. So let's talk about the camera package and the lens package and kind of what you put together for Halston.
Right. Well, again, the show had been started by Will as a Red show. I did not want to change all that. I wanted to, he was using the Sigma lenses, and we had some. Typical Panavision zooms. I think we wound up changing them to the Fujinons, as I recall, a little faster. But Will had used the Red Monstro, which I was very familiar with. Shot many shows with Red, including Stranger Things. And then he also used the Panavized version, which is the DXL2, I believe it's called. We wound up just staying with the Red Monstro, just because there's two different color sciences in there, and I knew we weren't gonna. There was no really a need for me anyway, moving forward to have that be another thing to think about. So I continued with the Red, and I think it's 8K, and the Sigma large format primes, which were great. But definitely a lens that is a major player now in our business. But I didn't want to change it up too much. I did walk away a little bit from using color filters in front of the lens and doing it more with the lights, just to accentuate color separation. And that made sense for the story to bring more color into it as he was growing. But the cameras came from Panavision, New York, and the support there was amazing, as it always is. And I've done my last 3 or 4 jobs with them, and my current film I'm working on now is they've helped out a lot running through New York and Atlanta. But they're great, and Red has been just wonderful to work with. The low light capabilities of that camera are remarkable, and
it's a good choice, I can imagine, for your scenes like Studio 54 with such deep blacks, and also Halston's apartment, which I wanted to talk about because that's like one of my favorite sets in the whole series. It's just It's what I love about it is it's so cold and uninviting. But there are little scenes where you make it warm, you make it personal, you make it really nice. But it's like that space is capable of really intimate, warm moments, but also these cold, awful, like, I don't even want to be here type of moments. And it was such a versatile set to me. It really felt like something that reflected his mood more than any other place in the series.
Oh, you're talking about not the one he had in the beginning of his career, but the loft.
That huge loft, yeah. With the staircase, like just kind of the open floating staircase and everything, like.
Right. That was a tricky one because in all the documentation that we've seen of it, you never see a single light in the place, and I was like, God, how am I going to light this? There's no lights. I mean, he just probably had hard ceiling light, and every photograph I've seen of it almost is lit by a flash. So that one was sort of freaking me out a little bit. So I begged Mark, our production designer, to throw some practicals in there to motivate some light, and we also used the fireplace to motivate light as well. And those were all, that wasn't a real fire. It was we had LEDs, stereotubes in there programmed to do a fire effect. And we didn't want to have our characters like flickering by fire the whole time, but we wanted to, we had the Martha Graham dinner. We lit with candlelight there. We had the sex scene in the middle floor, which we kept very dark and motivated off like a single practical. And but the main room, we employed some off-camera skylights to bring some light into it and keep it off those white walls. And we also had an exterior window in the back that I don't know if Halston had it, but I used that to motivate light as well. It was a tricky spot, but we had 3 floors to work with, and I think at one point we actually had them running through all the floors, a camera on each floor, which I love doing because then the actors can continue their scene all the way through, and it's super exciting to see them not have to break it up. And I think they enjoy it too.
That's cool. So the whole set was built. It was a 3-floor set.
It was an apartment in Red Hook here in Brooklyn. That's an amazing apartment.
So that was a real practical spot. That was on location.
You wouldn't recognize it if you saw it. It was a location. You wouldn't. Mark had built out those. The whole kitchen wasn't. The whole main floor had an open kitchen in it, and Mark hid that and built that staircase coming down. There's a staircase behind it. That's the real staircase, but he emulated. The original design of the Halston building, his apartment, and really, I think he really honors the way it looked. It was a tricky set. I mean, any GP will probably tell you that their least favorite thing is to light a white room, but in this case, we had all the pictures back there to go off of, and Halston dressed in black against there, and it was really, it was a fairly cold space originally, and I think that we tried to bring a little bit of warmth in, and just for the characters to show a little bit of his vulnerability, and he has some very vulnerable moments in that building, in that apartment. But it was a remarkable feat to convert what was an existing place into something that really looked like Halston's original apartment.
So you had mentioned there are scenes where they kind of span all 3 floors, or at least 2 floors. So you were allowing the actors to do a continuous take and all the way down that staircase by having multiple cameras rolling at the same time. Was I hearing that right?
That's right. We would. I would try to allow an actor to start a scene on one floor, and then he had to come up and meet another character on the other floor. And the first time I ever did that was on the finale of Girls for HBO, where we had a scene where they're running. Lena Dunham as Hannah's running through the whole place, and we lit it. In a way, it took a little while to light, but I had like 5 cameras that just captured the whole thing, so we got it in like 3 takes versus spending 3 days there. And it let her really inhabit the character. And I always loved how she really does her performance in that scene, and especially just being able to do that, and felt proud to be able to give that to her. And so this is another situation where I was able to try to do that, and Ewan was pretty thrilled about it, as I remember. Very generous guy, anyway. But it was fun to be able to do that and see a scene start in the bottom and then go to the top, and the cameras upstairs just taking the delayed roll and getting ready to have them walk into the scene and hit their marks. And when you have that kind of choreography, like circus choreography happening, it's pretty exciting.
One of the scenes that really stood out to me was the perfume when they were they're like in this little environment where they're figuring out the scents that are going to happen.
Oh yeah.
I absolutely love that, because there was something about that woman that made Halston feel vulnerable, but also comforted. And I thought that was it was one of the first times you saw like a real, genuine personal relationship between Halston and somebody else. Even with the Liza Minnelli character, like there was something unique about those two and what they meant. And it felt like a therapy session every time they were together. And I also think you guys did a really good job of just letting these actors kind of be in this scene, where everything else is so dramatic and big and elaborate and crazy. Yeah. Those fragrance scenes were really small and really beautiful and very character motivated. And I'd love to talk to you about kind of how you approached those and what you did differently to make the audience really tune into just what they were doing.
Well, we wanted to, especially in those scenes, we wanted to cross shoot them because it was a very personal scene, written scene for Ewan and for the character Halston. He describes it, I believe, in the show as scent is one of our strongest senses. And when he was designing his perfume, he had to really go back and use scent as use his personal memories of scent to get what he wanted out of that perfume, and it was going to be an emotional scene, and we wanted to cross shoot it between the two actors. So we got a location that felt like a sort of pharmaceutical kind of building, and it wound up being upstate New York at the Pfizer plant where they were developing the vaccine.
No way.
that I currently am a beneficiary of, but I wanted to give them a light that felt kind of clinical, but also a sense of mood to it. So I asked Dan if it was okay if we, and then Mark as well, if I had a glass lit table underneath them, a milk glass table, and that would allow me to have nice light. And I wrapped, like I said before, my muslin around to sort of reflect. It didn't go too deep in the eyes, and that allowed me to really cross shoot it. And we also, I think, as I recall, we had a little bit of a zoom or a move in on each character as they started their piece, their dialogue in there. But it felt very connected, and we were able to really shoot them in a way that what you're seeing is them acting against each other. At that location, which is a clinical place. And then we also filmed them at Halston's house when for the first meeting, I believe, when they're talking about sense, and it's a very vulnerable time for Halston then too. So we were, maybe a little longer lenses on that one, but the pharmaceutical location is the one that I think that you're talking more about.
But I mean, in the scene in his home, sort of, I referenced that earlier about how you created really warm moments in such a cold environment. But yeah, I am speaking about the more medical looking scene, because I think that was the first time they met. Maybe I don't remember if that was the first or the second.
Oh, jeez.
That one I think did a really good job of narrowing your focus as a viewer to just the performances, where I think the rest of the series, especially the bigger scenes, you're kind of looking at everything. You're looking at the wardrobe and the sets and the environment because there's so much to take in. This was an opportunity to really focus on the performances.
That's absolutely right. And it's actually one of the few times in the show where Halston is asking something of someone else from an emotional standpoint, in a very vulnerable standpoint. And he's expecting, I think when she asks him to bring her some sense that means something to him, and he brings tobacco, he brings his lover's jockstrap, and expecting her to recoil at the idea of having to smell it. And she does her job, and she does it, takes it seriously, and gives him what he wants. And I think it's a brief relationship, but it's one of the more honest relationships, and it's one of the more like equal relationships that we see. And professional as well.
Exactly. He respected her professional approach to something that I think otherwise would have been outrageous. And I think
it's also out of his
himself in that.
Yeah, it was also out of his wheelhouse, that whole thing too. So it wasn't like he knew the cut of a dress and was asking someone's opinion on it. It was about something that he wasn't. It was new to him, and even designing the bottle of the perfume went against. He bucked everybody on it, and it wound up being iconic.
Yeah. The last thing I wanted to talk about with you, and obviously feel free to chime in with anything else from the show you want to, but I just wanted to briefly talk about the his Halston's beach house.
Good.
And kind of the way that you approach that, because it's such a drastic departure from every other environment that he's in.
Yeah.
And that home like almost allows him to be a different person too. There's a comfort there that you don't get anywhere else. Talk to me about the way you kind of approach that scene, in particularly color and lighting.
Well, that house is based on the Andy Warhol Montauk house that we would have loved to have shot in, but for some reasons we couldn't make that work. Get the deal made on that. So we found a house on the North Shore of Long Island that was right on the water. So you have all this great reflective light coming in. And then we tried to, we did. We brought in more light from outside and hit a few things inside there as well. But you have a rich tonality in that building that absorbs the light and allows the actors to pop off of it. So that house is one of the first places that he bought when he started reaping, the benefits of his career. And it also was a place I think that he went to for inspiration and also to kind of get away from the hubbub of the city. It's my personal view on that. And it's the place where he finds out that his mother's, I don't want to give it away, but if you've seen the show, he finds out his mother's passed away.
Yeah.
The dinners outside under the veranda, we had this yellow awning that we used and allowed it actually to get into the actor's skin. We wanted to play it for what it was, and I think it worked out really nice. But those scenes around the dining room table outside, full of life and celebration, but then drama as well, as always followed Halston, seemed like a center point to his character. And I think it's very those scenes are very engaging. They were actually we shot the first week. That was the first week of shooting.
Oh
wow! When we started up in September.
It's the most naturally lit, at least, when you're watching it, it seems like the most naturally lit environment. It seems the most practically lit environment because the whole thing really feels like it's just lit by those windows and nothing else.
Yeah, it has that feeling for sure. And we were also, we went outside at one point by the beach. I think I went out to look back at the house and I saw somebody standing in the window there. And all of a sudden, like the sea reflected up to their nose, and then you could see their eyes through it. And I was like, oh my God. And we did a shot with you and looking out the window there too, that maybe even made it in the trailer. It's just fantastic. Seeing everything, the world reflected, the sea reflected in him. We definitely, I mean, I'll take advantage. If I have natural light, I'll take advantage of it anywhere I can. It brings the most honesty to any building and a location.
I'm glad you mentioned that awning. I totally forgot about it, but I remember watching it, thinking to myself, like, that's such a summertime thing. Like that old school yellow awning in the color that it cast really is summer. Like there's something about that makes you feel like summer. I thought it was and I remember when I was watching the series, thinking about like that awning is like, why is it there? Like it's so purposefully there. It's so like reminiscent of a time period and a feeling. And it didn't really need to be there. Like that was a pretty strong art direction decision to have a big yellow awning on that deck.
It did need to be there, quite honestly, Ben, because I couldn't protect those actors from the direct sun that we were going to get blasted with. So we really made a decision. I was like, this is going to save my life out here. And
wow, good.
And I think it actually has a double life. I think it's probably at the director's house right now as we speak, or going up soon. I think so. But it was nice. We all liked it. I don't know if Mark found that or how it came to be. I think that they did have an awning outside there that didn't exist at Andy Warhol's house, but Mark embraced it, and thankfully so, because it really helped us move through that scene. And again, able to get multiple cameras going at the same time for performances. That was a thing that we wanted to do on this show, especially.
Yeah, and as a viewer, once you know it's there, you're going to expect a yellow cast with anything underneath it. And it was cool to just kind of get that little touch of it when they have those dinners underneath that awning.
It felt okay. I mean, I know it's like I'm like, oh my god, everyone's looking yellow, but
I liked it.
As long as you see the yellow awning, now you know why they're yellow. So I was like, if I frame out the yellow awning, it'd be like, oh my god, everyone's like looking like they're going to throw up.
I loved it. I thought it made a lot of sense, and it felt good, and it just, I don't know. I think it made that scene even more, or made that whole environment, that whole set even more natural as having that cast. I thought it was cool.
It's one of Dan Minahan's favorite scenes, is that dining room table, and he absolutely loves. I think everything he got out of that, the performances and the way it feels, and it worked out really well.
Well, the show is called Halston. All of the episodes are on Netflix right now. There's only 5, so you got to get through this thing. I sort of binged it real quick. I saw them all in 2 days because I just became obsessed with it. But I love the show. If you like Ryan Murphy, you're going to love it, obviously, because it's just very Ryan Murphy. But just the acting's great. The story's really interesting, and it looks amazing. Thanks, of course, to your work and the original DP too, which you might as well, let's plug that again, because I know that was important to you to make sure people understood that it was it's somebody else that started this series. So who was that original DP?
Well, Will Rexer shot for I think 2 or 3 weeks on the beginning before they got shut down, and had completed the first episode. So. I'm more like episodes 2 through 5, and Will did the first, and I think altogether we had a great collaboration here.
Absolutely. Well, the combination of the two of you made for a really, really great show, and I appreciate you coming on to talk about it.
Thanks, Ben.
All right, I want to thank Tim Ives for coming on the show and talking about his work on Halston. Such a good show. It looks amazing. The cinematography is great. And Tim did a great job of explaining all those little details that I want to know, and I know you want to know. So check out the show over at Netflix. All 5 episodes available now. Of course, I want to thank our producer, Connor Crosby, for making the show happen behind the scenes. You can find him at ignitionvisuals.com. And Dave Siegel from Siegel Sound, who mixes and masters and makes the show sound so good. You can find him at siegelsound.com. I want to encourage you all to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, where we put exclusive content on our YouTube page. And also find us on your favorite podcast app. Search Go Creative Show. Hit subscribe, and you will be greeted with my voice and the voice of our great guests every single week. All things Go Creative Show at gocreativeshow.com. And if you haven't had enough of me and you want to see what I'm doing with my own business, you can find me at Ben Consoli on Instagram and Twitter at Ben Consoli. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next week on another episode of the Go Creative Show, a podcast for filmmakers.